Hey, Nerd Herd, have you ever thought, I would really like to have somebody take a look at my specific team, tell me what I should be doing, trades I should be making, what direction to take it in contender or rebuild? If that's something you're looking for, we have a live show every Monday at noon, every single week, and often there's multiple per week. It's all based on demand, but basically myself and one of my other co-hosts, we're going to dig into your team and tell you what kind of moves you should be making and what direction to take your team. If that's something you're interested in, just scan the QR code that's above here and use promo code RESCUE10. When you use that promo code, we're going to give you an extra 10% off. It's a great opportunity for us to come rescue your rosters.
Ready, set, hut, hut. Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss Dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Rich Dotson. He's Matt O'Hara.
Hey.
He's Garrett Price.
How's it going?
And we are talking Superflex Tight End Premium Startup Draft.
Yeah, we
is what we're
are.
doing. Because when do a lot of startup drafts happen? They happen
Summer.
in the summer. And, listen, it's Dynasty Hot Boy Summer. We're just doing some
Part due.
Yeah, some filler here to talk about some players. What I like about these shows is people are like, oh, dude, a mock. What do you do? You're going to do a mock? It just shows you, because there's a difference between ranking players and drafting players,
Yes.
right? Like, it's really two completely different dynamics of how you, like, when you're going to trade for a player, oh, you drafted him ahead of him. You're building a team, right? Yep. Like, and how do you go about that? Like, at one point, do you say, hey, I'm going all in year one. I don't care who I draft. I'm trying to draft the best win now team possible. Or do you do it where, like most people do it, they try to stay young and competitive? Because, like, I don't know about your guys and your usually startup strategy. Because I usually, that's my strategy, right? Like, I try to build a very competitive team, but also one that it has a lot of youth, and I have some good cornerstones on there.
Sure.
So I can compete for a while. And knowing that I also have, at any point, I could pivot off of any of these players and still get a massive return. Because again, value, right? Like, that's what you're mostly chasing.
I was going to say, that's the thing for me is, like, I really strongly just go best player available. Sometimes I'll use that, like, if I tend to have more of like a win now team or a younger team, like I'll use that to like break a tie if I feel almost exactly the same about two players. But other than that, I really do go best player available, which normally we've seen in other mocks. I end up with a lot of quarterbacks,
Right?
Because I will just take this one actually kind of worked out to where I actually have a fairly balanced team all the way through, which doesn't normally happen for me because I'm like, look, I'll make trades later. I want to take the best player I can. This one kind of worked out in my favor that way. We'll talk about some of the strategy in a little bit here, but I really try hard to stick to that.
And knowing what I know about you, I was nervous about the strategy that I started with.
Sure.
Because I thought maybe
You did more of my strategy.
I thought you were going to like gobble them up and I was going to be screwed, but we'll see exactly what we're talking about when we get into it here.
Yeah.
And a complete opposite for me, where I faded the position mostly. And I usually do. I usually have no problem fading running back if I don't see the value there. I do think it's, once you get outside those top guys, to me, it's the least valuable position in a startup for me because it's also the easiest to trade for. Not the youth guys, but starters, like down the road, as teams start to miss the playoffs, it's the number one thing people want to unload on their rosters because they know it's a short shelf life. So I know if I just draft good receivers, good tight ends, quarterbacks, there's a path for me to get a running backs. And more importantly, the running back for me is the easiest position to get for draft capital straight up, right? Like, you can get a solid running back for a first-round pick, where the receiver position can be a little bit more difficult, right? Like, some people are still asking for first-round picks for Devontae Adams, right? Like, for 1 year.
Sure.
So we'll see how this plays out and which way we kind of all went. Garrett, you ended up with the number 2 pick. Matt, you had the 10th pick.
I had the 7th.
I had the 10th pick.
Yeah, you had.
You had a 7th. Peter Bartowski he was in this draft
He was
as well
number
with us.
5.
He had number 5. So right there in the middle. And we'll kind of talk about what we were thinking there. Kind of go over these players. Anything?
Obviously, Superflex, tight end premium.
Yep.
3rd round reversal, all that good stuff. Kind of what we're do all the time, but
Yep.
just wanted to lay it out there in case
No.
this is the first time someone's listening.
It might be.
You never know.
I mean, look, there's a lot of people that listen to the podcast. Somebody's got to be. It's their first time.
Do
Exactly.
you like third round reversals?
I do overall. I like them more when I position myself towards the back end of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I intentionally, because I feel like every mock that I do, or even real draft, I try so hard to be like back 3 picks or so. And this one I was like, you know what? I'm going to like go away from my norm. I'm going to take the number 2 pick. So it was a little different than how I normally like to go about it. But we'll talk about how things turned out.
Matt?
Yeah, no, I just went I went far enough down that first round that I felt like I wasn't sure exactly what I was going to get.
Sure.
Right? Like I'm not,
Yeah, you're one of those almost, you're dead middle. You're at 7.
yeah, I'm at 7, so I would kind of let it happen. You know what I mean? I wanted to see what was going to be available, and then I was going to formulate kind of on the fly, and that's kind of how I did it.
I'll say, in third round reversal drafts, I prefer a back. I want to pick 10, 11, 12 in that range when I see a third round reversal, because I know I'm getting 3 really solid players. So let's go ahead and kick it off. Garrett, you just want to read off until you get to your pick. You might be reading for
It'll take me a while, but all right. Number 1 went Josh Allen. He went 101 overall. I picked 2. I wanted to be at the front, but I picked 2 because I was like, I don't really care who I get between Daniels and Josh Allen.
Sure.
I see them almost as identical assets. One a little bit safer, but one more longevity, maybe a tad higher ceiling in Jayden Daniels. So felt really good about either one of those guys. I took Jayden Daniels at 2. I think that's a pretty chalk pick. But I didn't want to go 3 or 4. I know Lamar Jackson's kind of become the consensus 3. Not quite. I don't know quite consensus, but he seems to always be kind of the next guy. This draft went slightly different. We had Joe Burrow go at 3, then Lamar Jackson at 4. Still nothing crazy, super far out of the ordinary. Pete drafted with us. We won't spend a ton of time, although I actually didn't mind his team. I thought he turned out a pretty solid team overall. He went with Brock Bowers at 105, which for some people that's going to be pretty high. I have no issue with him being in a Superflex tight end premium. I have no problem with him going after those first few quarterbacks.
I have no problem going as high as 3.
Yep.
Like,
I feel like I
don't
took
think there's any
him. I think I
complaint
took
there.
him like 4 in my last mock or something like that. So yeah, it's fine.
Yep,
a
absolutely.
true difference maker. And you're right. I think that's the big thing. You're right. Josh Allen, Jayden Daniels, it's a chalk. Like, I would actually take Jayden Daniels 1 overall for me personally. But yeah, it's complete chalk. I think for me, where I'm at, like if I have 3, 4, 5 in that range right around there, probably even high, even possibly 6. Like, those are picks for me that I'm trying to trade back
Desperately.
for. Like, who wants to move up? I'm willing to move down in the first. Honestly, I'd be willing to move down to the second if I had to for the right, like for a big haul. I would take a very small haul just to move back just a little bit, like an extra. I'd take future draft capital. Like, hey, here's a first in 2027.
I mean, realistically, Joe Burrow went 3. Do we feel drastically different about quarterbacks that went a little bit later at the end of the first round? Jalen Hurts went 1-9, Patrick Mahomes 1-11. Like, I don't feel drastically different about Joe Burrow than I do those guys. So if I can get some extra on top, like,
Makes
that
sense.
feels great to me.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, Matt. So you're on the clock at 1. Oh no, sorry.
Yeah,
After Bowers
then
went
1-6.
Justin Jefferson
Yep.
at 1-6, and then Matt, you were at a clock at 1-7.
Yeah, so I was sitting there. Obviously those computer picks pop off pretty quick. So it was, Josh Allen, and then you picked relatively quick too. It was Jayden Daniels. Then I was kind of sitting around waiting for Pete a little bit, and I'm like, I'm starting to formulate. All right, if Bowers is there, I'm for sure taking him. If he takes Bowers, I'll take Justin Jefferson, and of course those guys go
both,
bing bong, right? And then so now I'm kind of like, do I just go for it? Do I continue this wide receiver trend? Because Jamar Chase is a fine pick right there.
Absolutely.
Obviously, there's Jalen Hurts, Patrick Mahomes. We mentioned as guys that kind of came after that. I probably wouldn't have reached for Mahomes. Hurts was definitely in consideration. But I ended up I was like, we've been talking a lot lately about how the quarterbacks, there's good value in the 3rd, 4th, and even into the 5th round.
Absolutely.
As far as ADP goes for some of these quarterbacks. So I wanted to try something. So I went with another experiment here, and I went Bijan Robinson. I went best available running back. I feel like huge playmaker, obviously. And I just wanted to see, I think it's been a while since I've gone running back first. I feel like I've done tight end, I've done wide receiver, so I wanted to see how this thing would kind of look if I went running back here.
And I like that move, and definitely the way your team played out. Because obviously a lot of people are like, how do you take Bijan over Jamar Chase? Yep. Like, I totally understand that pick. I'm okay with that. And you're right. After we've looked at ADP, we looked at the value. Like, I think, from pivoting years ago, if we're like, oh, you got to hammer quarterback in the first, look again in the third. I do feel more comfortable with the guys that you can get in the third, fourth. Like I would say the third, I feel way more comfortable. Like, grab my first guy there and getting like an elite guy in our eyes, at least. Yeah. And then grabbing a couple more position players, then grab the value at quarterback too.
And another thing I knew I had on my side was this third round reversal to where Garrett wouldn't get 2 more bites at the apple before I did. I'm serious.
Which I typically do.
Which if it wasn't, he would have gotten 2 bites at the apple, and it could have been quarterback the way I've seen him do this before, and that would have obviously screwed me up a bit, and I wouldn't have gotten any sort of quarterbacks until that I value. And maybe I would have had to reach in the third round for a quarterback instead of getting the guy that I ended up getting. So that also went into my thinking some here with this first pick.
Which is still important. You still want to grab a young quarterback,
Absolutely.
Right? Like, you don't want to end up with...
It's always in the back of my mind in Superflex, no matter what. Yeah. Where am I going to get it? Like, where am I going to get it?
You don't want Jared Goff and Matt Stafford and Geno Smith as your quarterbacks, because then you are so close to a long rebuild for the most part.
Sure.
Because even when you grab these rookie quarterbacks, I'll just have to grab some rookies early on with a 1-1. They're 50-50, right? To be one in the league, but then to be fantasy football relevant at the same time. So it's a massive risk not to take a guy that you could believe in early.
By the way, did you see that in our real draft, Xavier Restrepo went just now?
Did he really?
Yeah.
Not a shock.
Hurricane Mike got him.
Love it.
I called it, man.
You're like, he'll be gone.
He'll be gone.
So it goes Jamar Chase after him. That's 1.8 for Chase is
great value.
Great value.
Yes.
Then it goes Jalen Hurts at 1.9. I'm going to clock at 110. And I'm sitting there saying, okay, quarterback, I'm with you. Like, I could push quarterback here. There's definitely one I can get in the second round if he's there. If not, I have no problem doing what you said, is fade him to the third, knowing that I have a third round reversal. And to me, this really came down to 2 players, Jahmyr Gibbs or Malik Nabers. And
both great choices.
Yeah. And I was like, okay, do I grab running back here and then pivot to wide receiver? And I just can't get past the youth of Malik Nabers, the amount of targets he will see, and what we saw him do as a rookie. And where he can take it, I'm really excited to see where he can take this in his sophomore year. I think by 2027, Malik Nabers has a strong chance to enter that top 3 consistent wide receivers overall. At that point, we're going to see Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase be a little bit older.
Yep.
Obviously, that'd be the year Jeremiah Smith comes in. I think by the time Jeremiah Smith does come in the league, I think there's a very good chance, excuse me, he might be, if he does what I think he's going to do at Ohio State, he might be one of the first rookie receivers ever to be a top 3 startup receiver pick. I think he has that kind of potential. I know I've been saying it for 9 months. Like, I have a lot of leagues where I plan to blow up my team after this year to ensure I have nobody on that roster. I want to start a complete new rebuild with Jeremiah Smith and 2027 picks in my back pocket. I've talked about my strategy of adding those 27 picks already, kind of get ahead of the game by offering all my picks next year, plus picks this year, and it's worked pretty well. So I went with Malik Nabers. Anytime I get like a 22-year-old elite stud receiver on my roster, that cornerstone player, Gibbs could be the same player, and I love him long term, but I always feel more comfortable with the receiver. And the only running back I really probably consider their over Nabers would be the guy you took, would be Bijan, because Bijan to me is more of a guaranteed 3-down running back, right? Sure. Like, he's not coming on the field, he's elite. Gibbs, elite, PPR running back, could be potentially the next Alvin Kamara is what we're going to see out of him for the next 5 years, which is, again, GOAT material.
Yeah, crazy.
But again, the chance, new offensive system, how do they utilize David Montgomery? Just enough to say give me Malik Nabers, who's on an ultimate doo-doo butter team.
All the targets.
Can only get better, right? Hopefully. So I went Malik Nabers. It goes Pat Mahomes, Jahmyr Gibbs, Puka Nacua.
That's the turn right there.
Ashton Genty.
So now it's back on you.
Yeah. So after Gibbs was a turn. So second round, 2-1, Puka, Genty. Was really hoping Genty would come to me. Like I'm Rick James and Chappelle's show. So just miss out there, but I'm okay with it because to me, this was the quarterback that I said, hey, I'm going to fade quarterback as well unless Justin Herbert's there because I'm a giant Justin Herbert honk, right? Like I believe in his arm talent so much where to me, he's a first round talent, but I feel really good about grabbing him in the second round. So I went Justin Herbert. Goes Brian Thomas after that, Saquon Barkley, and then we're back at Matt.
Before you say anything, Matt, this I thought was like the best value or one of the best values of the entire draft. Your pick right here.
I thought this was tremendous.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it.
He was sitting there. I mean, I looked around, right? I'm not going to just pick automatically, but he was sitting there like just beep, like a red beacon.
Yeah.
I did look at Trey McBride, who ended up going right after this. Because I just can't not look at tight ends that are, you know what I mean?
Sure.
Like I just can't not do that. So I at least looked around, and obviously Amon-Ra St. Brown is sitting there, and there was a half a second of waffling, and I went, nah, CeeDee Lamb's definitely the layup here, and I picked him. It was a pretty easy pick.
All three of those next picks were great, but yeah, CeeDee was the one that I was like, dang.
Yeah.
I mean, just one season removed from being the number one overall receiver. Dak's back and healthy, new offense. Like
Finally got somebody on the outside that can draw some coverage, and he's really going to be able to run wild, I think. So yeah, it's a nice 1-2 punch so far going for me. I feel really good about having Bijan Robinson and CeeDee Lamb as kind of my first two pieces.
young prime.
Yes.
Like they're both in their prime, but on the early side of it.
Absolutely.
I think 1-7. If it could play out this way, I think 1-7 is a phenomenal pick. If you can get Bijan there at first, and obviously you can say Jamar Chase, but I love this is why you passed on Jamar Chase with the Bijan, because when you come back, you got CeeDee Lamb. But even if CeeDee Lamb would have went, I would have been just as happy to have Bijan and Amon-Ra St. Brown or Drake London, honestly. And I would probably at this point, I'm starting to lean taking Drake London over Amon.
Okay.
I'm really starting to enter that like. I feel like Drake London's going to have a top 3 fantasy football.
Bijan was, sorry to cut you off. Bijan was the best player at a premium position. You know what I mean? Like that's why I ended up going with him. You know, there's an argument to be made that Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase, which one is the premier guy? There's not much of an argument for me for Bijan. He's the top guy. So I thought that's why. And there's just less running backs available. So
after those top 3 in a dynasty league, it's really hard to like count on anybody else.
Yes,
at that point. So.
Well, there's
scarcity.
There's a fourth guy that I kind of like a lot too.
I mean, I'm not saying there's not other good running backs, but I'm saying if I'm going to like have a cornerstone running back, I want one of those 3 guys.
Yeah, for sure. I get that.
So then it goes, obviously, Trey McBride, Amon-Ra St. Brown at 2.8. 2.9, Bo Nix, a nice player, a guy that I was kind of had my eye on and was hoping might get back to me.
So before we go on there, Bo Nix, I had my Scott Fishbowl live draft in Cleveland. Shout out to everybody who was able to attend that this week. It was a ton of fun. Honored again to be the host of the event. So it was a good time. And my buddy Rich Rebar was there from Warren Sharp. And in my opinion, he's on Twitter at Lord Reeves. I think Rich is honestly the brightest fantasy analyst in the game. Like he's number one in my opinion. And we were talking because the Russian quarterback. I was like, dude, what do you think about Bo Nix here? And he's like, shit, Kyler Murray over Bo Nix all day. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, man, I'm not really as high on Bo Nix as others. And I'm like, oh, say what? Because he was quarterback, whatever. He's like, dude, he had a lot of spike weeks. And if you go back, and again, Bo Nix is a rookie. He's like, if you look at Bo Nix, he struggled versus very good defenses, and he did all his performance was against bad defenses.
Don't give me hope.
So I was like, really? He's like, yeah, man. He's like, for this format,
I had to eat so much crow last year.
He's like, he's a rookie, so he can definitely do better. He's like, but like, I'm not as high as everybody else is just because of how many spike weeks he had, and the fact that like anytime he played a really good defense, he struggled pretty heavily. I'm like, oh, all right. I was like, well, I'll remember that one because Bo Nix is
back
pocket
guy. Back pocket that one.
Anytime a super bright guy tells me anything, I back pocket it.
There you go.
There you go.
Well, you can back pocket this. It was the next pick, and it was Drake London, and then
it was up to me.
Then it was up to you.
And this is a route that I used to go often, but I have not done this in a while.
Bam, bam.
I went 2 quarterbacks. Yeah. I'm one of only 2 teams to have taken 2 quarterbacks with the first 2 picks.
Cheeky fun.
And I was really happy with it. Look, I know that there's still quite a bit of risk with Caleb Williams. That's why I picked it to 11. There's a lot of risk there still involved. But when I was kind of looking at everything with the third round reversal, it did throw me for a loop a little bit.
Yeah, you kind of have to, right?
And I was like, man, I don't know what's going to come back to me in the third round. I have Jayden Daniels, so I can play it till the 4th and the 5th if I need to. But like I said, I'm really big on like who's the best value here. And for me, Caleb Williams deserves to be in this range, maybe even a pick or two sooner. So I was considering Nico Collins. I was considering, a running back here, some receivers I like. But at the end of the day, Caleb Williams, just locking down 2 young quarterbacks like that just really set your team up to really be great for a long run.
Yeah, that's a value. I had a 1-1 we did a industry mock draft for the nerds, all the writers, and I had a 1-1. I took Jayden Daniels at 1, and Caleb actually came back to me at 2-12.
Okay. So same situation.
Same situation. Absolutely loved that. I was like, oh, if this was real, like I'd be really ecstatic, because you're right. Like, it's so easy to get drawn in here and say, okay, I want Nico, I want Achane, I want Ladd, I want Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, hey, I got my one quarterback. It's easy to pivot. But when you have an opportunity to grab Caleb Williams, who went ahead of Jayden Daniels just last year, and all these other studs that we were talking about, and what they did in Chicago, like,
oh yeah, that line looks so good now.
If I'm gonna grab 2 quarterbacks first, this is a scenario that I have to be put in. I have to have the opportunity to grab 2 really young quarterbacks, one who's already a stud in Jayden Daniels, but the upside of Caleb Williams, like, I can't pass that up. And like you said, now my cornerstone is set to the highest scoring position in a Superflex league. And at any point, like, what I love about that pick as well is at any point, if I could find value at quarterback later and snatch that, and I'm okay with that, which you ended up doing, I have the ultimate trade chip in my back pocket, because now Caleb Williams is the kind of player, if he hits, and he's a quarterback, not 1 overall, but say he's a top 7 fantasy quarterback, that opens the door. Now you can get Bijan, you can get Brock Bowers, you can get Jamar Chase, you can get Malik Nabers. Like, that's the kind of player, like, just like Jayden Daniels, right? Where Jayden Daniels went last year. All of a sudden, we take Jayden Daniels because of the value there and the upside. Obviously, he went number 2 here. He's my number 1 over Superflex. He opens the door for everybody. Like, and I love grabbing those kind of players, right? The value, the upside. I actually did the same thing. You're like, oh, I've got to talk about this on the draft, because I want to grab that upside, right? That person who I think you and I were talking about this a couple weeks ago, Matt. That person that can't just jump around in ADP, but has a chance to jump into the first round of startup ADP, right? And obviously Caleb, he's in the second round here, so it's not a massive leap. But those are the players that open the doors for you to really change your team and shape it to a true contender, a true rebuild. Any way you want to go about it, that player is so insulated that you are set for a long time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
If he does what you're saying and becomes that player, there's talk of him at 3, 4, 5. That's where he starts getting talked about, is right after Jayden Daniels, and you got him basically a whole round later. So, and obviously, go another step going into, I think, Caleb Williams being a great pick here is if you look at the draft board itself, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teams that haven't even picked a quarterback yet. And now we're going into a third round reversal. So there's a pretty good chance that there's going to be some sort of run on quarterbacks. It didn't end up happening.
It wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be.
Which is weird, but that's how I would be looking at it and viewing it.
But you just don't know. Every draft is so different with those quarterbacks.
Right. Just analyzing the board. That's what I would do as well, because that's what I would see coming is some sort of run at quarterback at that point.
In every startup, every draft is drastically different. I was telling Gary before the show, in the Scott Fish Bowl, me and my son stayed up the night before in the 10th pick. And I was like, he's like, Dad, let's go over some stuff. And he's like, oh, Gibbs. I'd really like to get Gibbs. I was like, Cam, let's be realistic here. Like, Gibbs is not going to be there at 10 in this format, right? He's like, you don't think so? I was like, no. I was like, absolutely not. His ADP is top 4, and his value, because pass catcher running backs in Scott Fish Bowl's format, is unbelievable. He's like, okay. He's like, we should just rank him anyways. I was like, all right, let's just do it just because, but he won't be there. I was like, so let's be realistic about the guys you could get. We targeted those guys. In my division, the Browns division, Gibbs went 2. In the Cavaliers division, Gibbs went 2. Gibbs slipped to 10 in his division.
Wow.
Crazy.
He willed it, huh?
And then McCaffrey slipped to him in the second round. I took McCaffrey at 1-9. So it just goes to show you, like,
It just sounds like Cam's better at this.
He's
idea.
crushed it.
everybody there at the Scott Fishbowl is like, wow, Cam's team's pretty good because you got Jonathan Taylor in the third too. So running backs rule the roost here in this format. But his team, like even Rebar was like, dude, Cam's team looks like the best so far. And I was like, yeah, I agree. Like that's great value. So it really is like those surprise players that could pop up at any moment on your board. And I love those because it's like, oh, I just found tremendous value.
Yeah.
And I think Caleb Williams here, to me, for the format and the upside, is tremendous value. So where to go after that?
So Nico Collins then went at 212. Then we did the reversal, so we're back to the other side of the board. Lad McConkey went at 3-1. Marvin Harrison Jr. went at 3-2, which I'm sure those were two guys that you probably had your eyes on. Where'd you go at 3-3?
Yeah, obviously having Justin Herbert, I was praying Lad would come back to me, and I would have Nabers, Lad McConkey, and Herbert. I'd feel really good about that. Didn't play out that way, but again, that's fine. You know, got to have a plan B, got to have a plan C, got to have a plan D, and depends where you're picking. You might have to have a plan Q. So I went Devon Achane. That was one of the last. Now, obviously, any rookie here, like a Hampton, a Henderson, I could consider that, but they haven't done it yet. I love Devon Achane. I really do. Now that and this is before the trade, Johnny Smith gets traded, which I think is absolutely fantastic for Achane. I think it's absolutely fantastic for Waddle.
That's why I'm wearing the Miami colors, guys, for that
For
trade.
Jonnu's trade. I mean, Jonnu and Achane both, for the passing volume, attack the middle. And Jonnu, we saw last year, really take a lot of that away from Achane. So that opens that up because you mentioned even Darren Waller comes in. He's more
of a vertical threat.
So Achane has a chance to really take a big step
Is Waller
forward again this
any
year.
kind of threat?
No.
He's a hamstring pull threat.
Yeah.
He's had a lot of rest.
It's a bad rap song
It's had
threat.
Yeah, a very bad rap song. So, and I love Achane, and we were talking. He's another name I was talking about at the Scott Fishbowl because he took him in the second round, and that was somebody again. My buddy Rich Rebar was saying he's like, dude, I'm really tempted just to let you know this year, not he's like
This is the Rich Rebar episode. This is like the third name
I like
drop.
talking him up. Well, I'm just saying like he said he's like I'm tempted to take Gibbs or Achane over Gibbs for just this season. Like, oh wow, yeah, I did.
That's whoa.
Impressive.
Listen, again, bright minds pass along the info to our users,
Hey,
right?
there you go.
Like, again, if I was hanging out with Matthew Berry, he told me something sweet. If I was hanging out with JJ Zacharyson, which we'll see him in August, or Matt Harmon, like I'm gonna tell everybody what he's telling me.
Did he say if he like folds or does he crinkle his,
These aren't
his
secrets.
toilet paper?
Well, he smelled great.
Okay.
I leaned in. No, I just it's so for me, again, Achane is one of those last running backs that I feel really good about. Young, explosive. And I know once I grab that one running back, unless there's value there, I'm probably going to, I want one of those young guys, so I know I'm going to fade it later.
Yeah.
So I take Achane. It goes Drake May after that.
Who, by the way, I was tempted to take Drake May where I took Caleb Williams. I was close to taking May.
That would have been.
I didn't, but I was close.
Drake May, Travis Hunter, Matt's back on the clock.
I'm back on the clock, 3-6. This was the guy I was pigeonholed into my spot. Like I was hoping and praying that Jordan Love would get back to me. He did end up getting back to me. So this was like one of the easiest picks that I gave it no thought whatsoever. Jordan Love was there. I was kind of waiting with bated breath, so to speak, for him to get there. So he was the guy that I was really targeting when I made my first two picks. I was like, I hope Jordan Love gets back to me. If not, I'll have some other guys, but this one just worked out perfect for me.
I love that pick. I think that's a great.
Yeah.
He was hurt all last year, so I'm really excited to see him healthy again, how much they're going to throw the football. And definitely the fact that they still invested with all that receiving hodgepodge and potpourri of receivers. Third round, still took receivers.
Yep, they're loading up, man. They're ready to pass the ball. I mean, they didn't do much at the running back position. I mean, they got 1 year older with Aaron Jones, and obviously Jordan Mason went there.
Talking about the Vikings.
I'm talking about the Vikings in my brain right now.
Yeah, but they did. But Josh Jacobs.
But Josh
and
Jacobs.
Lloyd.
Thank you for correcting my
was
brain.
like,
I don't know where my brain just went back in time.
I did the same thing talking about Jonathan Taylor on Sunday at the Scott Fish Bowl. I was like, dude, yeah, man, the offensive line already won the top run blocking offensive line. They bring in Ryan Kelly. They drafted Donovan Jackson in the first. Like, you're talking about the Vikings. I'm like, oh yeah, I am talking about the Vikings.
Kelly used to play there though.
I did the same thing.
But Jordan Love does play for Green Bay, and they did some good things in the run game, so that's all good. So after my pick, obviously my layup, Jordan Love that I gave,
which is a layup.
which I gave no thought to even when I was talking about it.
He's one of the best. Like, again, more reason to fade it, like knowing you get Jordan Love as your quarterback 1 and a third, or even like I said, Drake May as an option. I do feel more comfortable. I actually do feel more comfortable with Jordan Love as my quarterback 1 than I do Drake May, just because of what we've seen already. But great value.
And this was, this whole strategy kind of was born out of the ADP shows that we were doing a couple weeks ago when we just saw the guys that were falling. I was like, if I can get him there
in the 4th,
truly, if I can get him there, that's great. I'll take him in the 3rd. That's fine. I'll overdraft him, quote unquote, according to ADP, and get him in the 3rd.
No,
great
it's
about that.
It's why ADP is so important. Like I was saying with my son going over strategy, it's like you got and we talked about it, like, wow, the value right now is quarterback in 3rd to 5th. So to have that plan and then be able to execute it is important. And of course, we run mock drafts every single week. We have live ADP that we update multiple times a week on the Dynasty GM app. So if you do have a startup coming, that is very important information for you to have to build a solid plan. Now, again, you never know how the draft's going to play out. If there's a quarterback run, a receiver running back, you don't know.
Right.
But if you have a solid plan like this and then be able to execute it, it's a beautiful thing to see.
Yeah, so far it's worked out great, and everything kind of fell into place for me. Obviously, it can go wrong when you're relying on these things and you're hoping for things to happen. But ADP is a great tool, like you mentioned. So after me, Breece Hall goes 7, then Omarion Hampton, AJ Brown, Sam Laporta, and then on to you.
There were 3 players I was really considering with this pick. Pete took one of them in Omarion Hampton. He was somebody that I definitely had my eye on, that I was wanting to take. Garrett Wilson was somebody that I was considering with this pick. I think he's going to have a good year with Justin Fields. But the guy that I've kind of been really on, even though he already broke out last year, I think he could even break out to another level this year with DK Metcalf moving on and all of this is Jackson Smith and Jigba. I think we saw, I think he had 5 touchdowns last year. Like, he did not have a high touchdown number. His team target share percentage was much lower than a guy you would expect for where he finished as wide receiver 9 overall. There's just a lot of indicators that would point to, like, things could actually be a lot better even than this.
I feel like last year we were talking about him in that manner as well. Like, a year from now, Lockett's for sure going to be gone. You look at his contract, that he's going to be gone, and DK Metcalf could be gone. And he could be the guy. And it was kind of almost pie in the sky stuff, but it was all within the realm of possibilities.
Based on the contracts.
And all that kind of stuff. And it came to fruition. And I think this is a great pick, and I do see big things for him. Obviously, Cooper Kupp is there, but I think it's going to run through Jackson Smith and Jigba, and Cooper Kupp's going to be that secondary guy.
He'll be the new Tyler Lockett. He's going to get that type of volume and stuff like that. But I think we see a slight volume increase for Jackson Smith and Jigba. Nothing crazy, but I think he's going to approach that 9 targets a game or so, which is really where you want to be, and that's where you start getting some massive numbers. Garrett Wilson then went right after him at 312, so obviously I was in the right headspace for that. CJ Stroud went at 4-1, which I wasn't never considering. And then 4-2.
You had to keep the Ohio State streak going, right?
That's right. I'm going with Buckeye here.
Buckeye.
Jackson Smith.
Oh, yeah, because, there was 4 straight. I didn't even think of that. I thought you were just talking about my team, but yeah, it was all Buckeyes around this turn. I went with Travion Henderson at 4-2. Obviously a guy that we talked up in the rookie profiles and all of that kind of stuff. And, looking at some of the players that had already went, some of the running backs that were still available, Bucky, Jonathan Taylor, Kyron, Christian McCaffrey, like all names that are interesting names for me. But there's nobody left that I was able to pair up youth and like draft capital.
Right.
Those 2 things, because Bucky's obviously got the youth, but does not have the draft capital. All the other guys are a little bit older. I know some people will think this might be a tad bit of a reach. For me, this was truly the next best available player on my list. So I wasn't even, it worked out because I'm a little more diversified position-wise now and stuff.
Sure.
It's not what I was going for, but it worked out very nicely. So I was actually very happy with Travion there.
Yeah, I actually like him here too. I would have taken him over every running back you taken him over.
Okay.
And sometimes where we talk about ADP, you got to be aware of, and here's the reason why. Because for anybody who's saying, wow, he went ahead of like Rashee Rice. Obviously, you have 2 quarterbacks, not a big deal. not some people could say, maybe T. Higgins, but for the most part, like Trevion definitely kind of belongs here.
Mm-hmm.
But more importantly is in a startup, I think a strategy you have to kind of remember is like, if you can't trade out of your pick, for example, like get your guy. Like ADP is there to kind of let you know where these players are going to go. But if you take a guy 10 spots above his ADP, but you don't pick for another 18 spots, like that's fine. You want to make sure you get your guy. I'm a big in a startup draft, get my guy. And I'm not afraid to take him a whole round earlier because I'd rather reach for a guy that I love than miss out on a guy.
Right.
So for me, Trevion, he kind of fits the bill too for that one of those last running backs that I feel. Obviously, Hampton would have fit the bill there.
Sure.
But Trevion's like one of those last running backs that I feel really good about, right? A player who I love his tape. I love his draft capital. I love it where he's at, and I love his youth. He's on his first contract. Like, those are kind of guys I want. Like, we still have R.J. Harvey out there. We have Quinshawn Junkins and Caleb Johnson, but Trevion's like the last of those like top tier
that feel
guys.
like elite. Yeah.
So for your team having Daniels, Williams, and Jackson Smith, it's like, okay, I do want one of those guys.
Yeah.
Right. Like I do want to come out of the draft with all. Like I said, I got Achane. I took him around earlier, but like I do want to come out of the draft with at least one of those running backs
That I feel good
because.
about.
Like I said earlier, it's easy to go ahead and fill that second running back spot with a guy who's replaced somebody injured,
Sure.
an older veteran. It's much harder to do it 2 spots.
And this ended up being kind of interesting for me because I ended up I wasn't going into this planning it, but I'm like, holy crap, I have a very young team overall. But all players that, like, could it be one of those situations where, like, didn't quite all come together this year? Maybe. But it's also a scenario where we've seen a lot of these young guys already hit. And if they take that next step, if a Caleb Williams, if a Trevion Henderson, some of the other guys I take later take that next step, then all of a sudden we could find ourselves as contenders right off the rip.
Yeah.
Yep. No doubt about it.
All right. So after that went Rashee Rice.
Good value.
Another player I was definitely considering. Bucky Irving went at 4.4. Pete took Brock Purdy at 4.5.
Can we stop there for a second? Let's
Sure.
talk about Pete's strategy because he went Brock Bowers right at 5. He
ended
got
up with a good
Amon Ra at 2.8, and then he got Hampton in the 3rd. And kind of this goes back to our strategy because his next pick is a quarterback. You'll find out who it is. But getting Brock Purdy here in the 4th kind of still pushes that narrative we've been saying. Hey, it's totally okay to fade quarterback here because in the 3rd, 4th, 5th, you can get good value.
Yeah.
And for him to get a guy who's been nothing but a QB1, every time he's consistently taking snaps in that offense in the 4th, and then fill each position with the number 1 tight end, a wide receiver 1 Amon, and a high upside running back with first-round pedigree Mario and Hampton. The backfield that Brock Purdy is his first quarterback, I thought from the 5 spot, that is a tremendous start to building an instant winner while staying young.
Yep.
So,
and he finished off his draft really well. I mean, we'll get to it as well, but
yeah,
I thought Pete actually had a fantastic draft.
Fantastic.
Yep. And so after him went TEP McMillan, and then I was back on the clock. There were a ton of guys that I was kind of hoping would come to me. You know, Trevion Henderson was on that list. Bucky Irving was on that list. Brock Purdy, I would have definitely thought about
Taking as your quarterback too.
Yeah, and just scooped him up. But Jonathan Taylor for me ended up being the pick, and he was kind of, you know, by the time all those other people had gone, he was the guy that kind of shined to me, right? Like,
sure.
I mean, last year he was running back 12 in PPR, only played in 14 games, 17.5 points per game. So to be able to pair him up with Bijan Robinson, I felt like I was getting a dynamic duo and something that every team in the league was going to be kind of envious of, and kind of on a week in and week out basis, like you just set it and forget it. Your whole running back position until bye weeks come. So I felt really, really good about that. There were obviously, you know, like the wide receivers had kind of gotten into a weird zone where, you know, T. Higgins is sitting there. Worthy, Rome Odunze, Emeka Buko, all those guys were there. None of them were really like jumping out at me though.
Sure.
Right? And at that point, all the young tight ends that meant anything to me were also off the board. Yeah. So Jonathan Taylor again just kind of made a lot of sense. And I felt like, again, not to be redundant, but we have seen so much value kind of falling at that quarterback position. I thought you know what, if I didn't get Purdy, I'm okay just kind of waiting a couple rounds, see if Baker Mayfield falls to me. See Dak Prescott's still sitting there on the board. Jared Goff's still sitting on the board. Like all these, there's a lot of guys that I could fill in nicely. I feel like still on the board for my QB2. So Jonathan Taylor felt like he was just the biggest impact for my roster.
Absolutely.
Then after me, Kyron Williams was taken, then T. Higgins, and then on to Rich.
All right.
This is the surprise pick.
Well, before I get into my surprise pick,
Okay.
I just want to tell our Dynasty Nerds fam, let everybody know our partnership with FastDraft continues to grow, and now they've launched something completely different, the Rabbit Tournament. This isn't your typical best ball format, and it's creating massive opportunities for sharp players like you guys. Here's what makes a Rabbit special. 15 roster spots starring 8 players, full PPR with total points scoring, and only 10 teams per draft going 15 rounds deep. With a 20-second clock, drafts finish in just 20 minutes, twice as fast as traditional best ball. Plus, it's completely rake-free, giving volume players the best possible ROI. Rake-free. You don't get a lot of those opportunities in best ball.
You're saying rabbit, right? It's
Rabbit.
Rabbit?
Yep, rabbit. Like Bugs Bunny.
Like Bugs Bunny.
Yes. The best part, since many new players are discovering best ball through FastDraft, the ADP is still considered soft. Perfect for experienced dynasty players to exploit. Use the promo code NERDS when you sign up, and FastDraft will match your first deposit 100% up to $50. Non-members who deposit at least $10, non-members of Dynasty Nerds, enter a contest will still receive that free year bundle of our premium Nerd Herd and the Dynasty GM bundle. Already a member, we're going to send you a $25 gift card for the Dynasty Nerds store, which can be used on our YouTube show, Roster Rescue, or any kind of merch you want to get. So go download the FastDraft app or go to draftfaster.com. Use that promo code NERDS. Let's dominate this rabbit together. Promo code NERDS.
All right, and we've got to tell you as well about FFPC. We just talked to them the other day. They're like, so many people from listening to the Dynasty Nerds are coming and playing with us, and it's because we talk about how great of a platform it is.
No doubt.
It is such a great place to go play in those Dynasty leagues. You don't have to stress out about, is this league going to fold? Do I have a crooked commissioner that's going to steal my money? Like, you don't have to worry about that kind of stuff. You put in your money, you know it's safe. Whether you just put in $35 or you put up $2,500 and you want to be a baller, you can feel safe and secure. You know that league's not going to fold. They also have very unique formats. They have a Triflex format and all these different ways that you can get in there and play fantasy football. So head over to myffpc.com. That's myffpc.com. Use the promo code NERDS. That's promo code NERDS at myffpc.com. We'll give you $25 off your first entry.
Free. I still want to try one of those Triflexes.
Do it.
Maybe in July, maybe you and I could join the league together.
Okay.
Let's try it out.
Yeah.
See how it plays out. And then we can win some cash. And we use our dynasty minds together to dominate. Get super rich.
Yes.
Super rich, Dotson.
Super rich.
All right. So I'm on the clock here at 4:10. And I considered some players here. Like I really thought about maybe possibly going Quinshawn Junkins to pair with H.N. to give me a solid young running back core. I thought about going to Mecca Ibuka. I thought about going about my boy Baker Mayfield, right? Coming off a fantastic year.
I thought that's for sure who you were taking. Look, the guy you took is a player that you like a lot too. So it wasn't surprising. I was just surprised that this player has replaced Bake. I didn't see that coming.
Oh yeah. So and I really considered Romo Dunze too.
Okay.
Just to give you a heads up. So those are players I were really considering. But when it came down to it, it was really an actually easy decision for me. Wow. And I took JJ McCarthy. So this was a pick where I kind of thought before, like I'm looking for somebody here. I already got Justin Herbert, right? And I think JJ McCarthy, again, most of these quarterbacks are insulated, these first round pick quarterbacks, if you're top 15. And he's one of those players that I genuinely think, obviously I've talked about him up a ton on the show. I'm all in. And I think this is another point where like I wasn't going to take any chance whatsoever to wait any longer on JJ. Like I couldn't, even though I was only picking again in 5 picks, I didn't want to risk, definitely knowing that the only one quarterback was taken so far with the 2 teams behind me. So I thought there was a very good chance I could go 4 quarterbacks off the board, possibly, by the time it got back to me, and I was not going to risk that. And for me, getting a 22-year-old quarterback, and I've said this a ton, in Kevin O'Connell's system, with the weapons around him, with that offensive line, I'm in a really good position to get a quarterback 1. And if J.J. McCarthy finishes as a quarterback 1, and he finishes anywhere from probably quarterback 8 or higher, maybe even possibly quarterback 9, he's going to be a probably
first
inch his way into his first round startup. So I couldn't pass up that opportunity. And I was like, you know what? I'll back him up with another quarterback later. I'll make sure when I do take a risk like that, which is still a risk because he's not even taking a snap in the NFL yet.
Right.
So even though I'm all in, I'm also very realistic. Like, hey, this could blow up in my face. And when the first time, it could be the next Clyde Edwards-Helaire where I love the situation, I love the player, it just doesn't work out, right? Like it's a miss, right? Like even Tony Gwynn struck out, which is unbelievable because he never struck out, but he did occasionally. So for me, when I do make a pick like that, I am also conscientious of, okay, I can't shoot myself in the foot. I have to make sure I back up that position as well. But I'm certainly not willing to miss out on that because nothing would be worse if I did miss out and then JJ does turn into exactly what I thought he would. Sure. And I'm like, oh, I tried to get fancy and I took Quinshon Judkins. And Quinshon Judkins could be running back 6 overall. It will never beat a 22-year-old QB1 ever. And to be honest with you, almost no position could beat a 22-year-old, even going to 23-year-old consistent QB1, right? It's why Jayden Daniels went where he went where he went for you. Caleb Williams could make that leap. Like those are, when we talk about Superflex cornerstones, that's the ultimate cornerstone you can get is that young quarterback because that you can put him in your roster spot and you can set him there for the next 15 to 17 years. That is so unbelievably long.
Yeah.
I can't put it into details. I mean, if you're new listening, you probably haven't heard in a while. Like in our original league, which we started in 2003, I had Drew Brees. I started Drew Brees at quarterback for 15 years? Yeah, 17 years.
Until 2021 or 2022, whatever.
Yeah, until we retired. So 17 years I had him. That is such a ridiculously long time.
And that was a 1 QB league. You just didn't have to worry about it for that long. Like insane.
And then more so in Superflex, not like you said, to Jayden Daniels, Caleb Williams, not to have the pressure to worry about the quarterback. It's such
so nice
a feeling luxury. Because you could just take best player available. Because when you don't have it, you're always looking for it, and there's nothing else you're looking for. When you blow it up, you got to start there. And what do? Now your hands forced. You have to draft those guys ahead of every other skill position because you need a quarterback, right? If you're going to start to rebuild, you can't take a running back, right? Because you're not rebuilding without any quarterbacks with a running back. So you have to grab those positions. So I know it's a risk. I know, and for me, it really came down to, okay, Baker's 30 years old. JJ's 22 years old.
Sure.
I'm willing to risk it. Now, could I have taken Baker when he came back? Sure. But I was like, once I have my 2 quarterbacks, I'm not going back-to-back quarterback. I'm going to go ahead and fade it and make sure I grab some skill position players. So I went JJ, and then right after that, it went Kyler Murray. I'm like, see, here we go. But then it went Christian McCaffrey, Quinshon Judkins, Josh Jacobs. So I was completely wrong about them taking quarterbacks.
It ended up being a running back.
It was a running back run. I was like, all right, well, there goes my other running backs. And I'm on the clock here again, and I went young again, and I took Emeka Egbuka. And this is a player that I understand where in 2025, I'm probably not going to get all the juice I want to squeeze out of Emeka, but I'm totally comfortable with that because this is a player that I'm very confident to be a fantasy football producer. I think his floor is a wide receiver too. I think that's his floor, but he's got such a great all-around skill set, and I love the fact that he's in Tampa Bay. He's experienced with he's going to be experienced with Baker Mayfield, and a great comp for Emeka Egbuka is a guy like Chris Godwin. And the fact that we saw what Chris Godwin can do with Baker Mayfield, which is be wide receiver 1 overall up until he got injured, is something, again, I feel very comfortable pairing a Malik Nabers. So when I look at my team with J.J. McCarthy, Devon Achane, Malik Nabers, and J.J., add another young receiver here, to me, gives me that young, solid core going forward. And a high-end core. And I know now, having a player I can't start right away, I'm okay with that as well. Because I know now, anytime in a startup, there's always value with the veterans, right? The older receivers, the Devontae Adams, guys along those lines. Then you go ahead and grab on your roster, then give you that wide receiver 1 for if it's just 1 year. And for a guy like Emeka, all I need is 1 year. So I take Emeka, it goes Chase Brown, Then it goes Baker Mayfield, and then Matt, you're on the clock.
Yep.
This one pained me too, by the way.
This one pained you?
I really thought he was going to come back to me.
Well, I thought Emeka was going to get back to me.
Oh, okay.
So I was.
So blame Rich.
Yeah, blame Rich. So I had to pivot because of him. And honestly, Baker Mayfield went one pick before I would have gotten him as well. I would have taken Baker there also. So I really did get scooped. Both of those guys were guys I was kind of eyeballing. Obviously in between Rich's, my pick and Rich's picks. Hoping that they'd get back to me. They didn't. I felt really good about getting Rome Odunze here. Obviously, I'm getting some youth. He showed enough there last year that I think he's going to be something here in Chicago. Obviously, new coaching staff, all that kind of stuff. There is a little bit of uncertainty around a guy like Rome Odunze as to what exactly his role is going to be. And they just have a lot of mouths to feed. But I still feel, obviously I've already gotten CeeDee Lamb, so he's my number one, but getting Rome Odunze as my number two, I get some youth. I get some big-time upside as far as a guy taken in the first round that could really take off and be another stud on my roster. So I felt pretty good about that. And then after my pick, you guys, anything yay or nay?
I love that pick. Obviously, I said I was, looking at him, and partly it was, it would be a nice stack with Caleb Williams. Right. I was excited about that. Sure. But I don't go out of my way to try to stack, but when it works out, you're thrilled. Sure. And I was like, oh, this is going to line up perfectly. ADP-wise, he's right there for me. Hopefully everyone stays roughly true to ADP, and, of course, it doesn't work out that way typically. But no, I thought it was a great pick, especially, you took two running backs, really trying to get that, another young receiver in there, a guy that has some real upside. So, yeah, I thought that was a really good pick.
If Mecca would have been off the board, I would have taken Rome.
Okay. Yep. So, obviously, after my pick, he went James Cook, Trevor Lawrence.
Go with Peters, Brock Purdy. So, again,
right.
he went Bowers, Amon-Ra, Amar, and Hampton. And then fourth and fifth, he got Purdy and Lawrence. He's young. He's long-term contracted. And he got his two starting quarterbacks that he could put into his cornerstone with those studs ahead of him. So, again, it kind of backs up that ADP theory.
Lawrence was the guy I was actually looking at with my pick as well. So there was at least some consideration a couple picks earlier before I pulled the trigger on Rome Odunze.
My number one owned dynasty quarterback, Trevor Lawrence.
Okay. Yeah. Right. Just love the system that he's going into. Obviously, Baker Mayfield had a ton of success there with Liam Cohen in Tampa Bay. Cohen goes over there to Jacksonville, and I expect him to have kind of a jump this season as far as production. Obviously, they've got Brian Thomas, they've got Travis Hunter, and just
and they invest in two pass catching running backs in that draft as well. So.
Right. A lot of good things there.
We see Brenton Strange taking a step forward this year as well into his third year for Brenton, right?
Third year,
yeah. Yep, sure is.
Which is usually the breakout year for a tight
end. And he flashed last year.
He did.
In his time
when Evan Ingram was hurt.
Yeah, as a starter. So yep. So Trevor Lawrence, and then Derrick Henry went 5'9", and then 5'10" was Xavier Worthy, and then it was on to you.
All right, is this the last pick we're going to do for this show? We're finishing round 5, and then we'll start round 6?
I think that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So this will be the last pick. I will be honest. I did not like this range at all. When I was looking at all of the players available roughly in this ADP, I was like, I don't love any of the value here. Like, nobody feels like a value. So I actually went a little bit further down the ADP list based on my personal rankings. I went down a little bit for this player and the first player that we'll talk about in tomorrow's show. I went down the ADP list a little bit. I ended up taking Caleb Johnson here. Now, when I watched Caleb Johnson's tape, I was like, oh, this is a good running back. I don't think he's as amazing as maybe other people do, but a very solid running back. I'd love to see him in more of a power running game scheme. Something. Of course, he goes to Pittsburgh. Seems like a hand-in-glove fit. Pittsburgh didn't have a lot of draft selections, and yet they used their second pick of the draft on a guy like Caleb Johnson. I know Warren's there, and Warren is going to be involved. I don't think it's going to be all the Caleb Johnson show, but he's going to have the opportunity to be the next in line of big physical running backs that they've had. They had, Najee Harris most recently, Rashard Mendenhall, Jerome Bettis. Like, they have a type. He fits that type. So I think he, long-term, if he shows enough, which I think he's got enough ability where he could, this could be one of those guys that's getting 240, 250 rush attempts per season as things go on. So, like I said, I don't like this range. This is probably where I would have been wheeling and dealing had we been able to trade. But I did like Caleb Johnson enough that I wanted to take him here. And then Tyler Warren finished off the 5th round.
Yeah, and Caleb's only 21 years old. So
Super young.
You get a lot of youth there as well.
So the first pick of the 6th round was Devonta Smith. I ended up going with Jaylen Waddle here. Now, it was an interesting pick. I talk a lot about best player available. When I say best player available, I'm not necessarily saying I am taking the top player on the ADP list every time. That's not what I'm saying. I am looking at my personal rankings, like how I draft players and who is the best guy available based on how I evaluate players, not how Sleeper does it or ADP or anything like that. So I took Jaylen Waddle here. According to ADP, he could have been available at 7-11, my next pick. But I was not going to wait almost 2 full rounds to guess and hope because I didn't love a lot of the players in this range. And I think if there's one player that we could see a huge bounce back from, it's Jaylen Waddle. We've seen him be a wide receiver 1 before. And now with Jonnu Smith departing, that was 100+ targets that are just now gone. Now, I get that they just brought in Darren Waller and whatever. I think this is going to go back to...
I think that falls under the and whatever.
Yeah, exactly. Like, this team traditionally did not use a tight end. That's why nobody, including me, was on Jonnu Smith before the season because they just never used the tight end. So it was kind of an anomaly that they even did it. And Darren Waller doesn't even play the same type of game that Jonnu Smith did. Jonnu Smith was underneath, make some guys miss a little bit quicker. Darren Waller's the more linear guy, go up and get it, stretch the field. So just very different type of players. But I think this goes from a position that was going to be getting 100, 120 targets in that range to a team that's now going to allocate 50 to 60 targets to this position. So I think it's somewhat of a dead position, but that opens up another 50, 60, 70 targets for these other 3 main assets, which is Devon Achane, Jaylen Waddle, and Tyreek Hill. So for me, I went with Jaylen Waddle.
I think it's a nice pick there. I doubt he would have made it back to you. So I think that was kind of the place you had to take him if you wanted a minor team.
And that's the hard part about the ends sometimes too, is like to really think you're going to get a guy you like back, you got to make sure he's way later in ADP, because if he's anywhere close, you're really gambling.
Yep, you just got to gobble him up and make those kind of tough decisions. It's always, if it's a player that you love, it's always the prudent decision to just take them earlier than they should be taken.
Yep.
Not a big deal, right? So after you, it was Cam Ward at 3, George Kittle at 4, at 6'5", Zay Flowers. That was Peter's pick. Zay Flowers is a tricky one for me. I like him as a player. I think he's a very good player. Mm-hmm. It's the Baltimore offense. It's the kind of other weapons around him. I think he's finished like 25th last year, 31st the year before that. So it's kind of, he's one of these players that we nailed. You know, when he went to Baltimore, we were like, that's a bit of a bummer for his value. We like the player, but we don't love this spot. Because the high end upside just kind of isn't there for Zay Flowers in that offense.
The thing that helps though is where he took him. You know, this is end of wide receiver 2, beginning of wide receiver 3 range. So I think this is where he should have gone. But you're right, he doesn't have necessarily the ceiling that maybe some other players.
I mean, even Jaylen Waddle, like
right,
you know, the wide receiver that you took 3 picks earlier, has a much higher ceiling in my opinion.
I would agree.
So then it was Kenneth Walker at 6'6", and then I was on the board. This is when I was kind of hell bent on getting my second quarterback. I feel like at this point, you know, Baker had already gone, Trevor Lawrence had already gone. Those are the 2 guys I was kind of looking at. Now Cam Ward has also gone in this round, so I feel like maybe there's a run coming. I'm gonna grab my guy Jared Goff, finished as QB6 last year. I feel pretty good about him being my second quarterback and pairing him with Jordan Love. Kind of having a nice little 1-2 punch. Neither one of those guys I expect to be a top 3 guy, but I do expect both of them to land solidly as QB1s and possibly top 5, top 6 type of finishes. So for both of them. So I feel pretty good about getting him there. And then after me, Terry McLaurin, RJ Harvey, and on to Rich.
Yeah, and then of course RJ Harvey goes right before me because that's how
I was wondering, would you have taken him?
Oh, 100%. I got sniped. So I was sitting there, I was looking at some receivers because I only have a Mecca and I have Malik. And there's a couple guys I liked, and I saw that team 12 still didn't have a quarterback, and I was like, okay, it's kind of interesting, you know. Like I could probably go ahead and take the guy I'm going to take here and way down receiver and get like Chris Olave or DJ Moore. So I took TJ Hawkinson, who I absolutely love. He's my number one tight end that I'm willing to wait for, that I still could be a top 3 fantasy football tight end. Only 27 years old still, now fully removed from the ACL injury in this explosive offense, and I have JJ McCarthy. So to me, this was a very easy pick. I love to get an elite tight end in my eyes in Superflex tight end premium, and I got my guy here. And if I would have missed out on Hawkinson, I was still thinking possibly husband material here. But there's still some guys like I would have been willing to bet on Colston Loveland as well there. So there's some guys I saw that knew I could wait on Hawkinson just in case. And it really paid off because I got Hawkinson here in 6. Then it goes Jordan Addison. Then it goes DJ Moore. Then it goes Colston Loveland. It goes Chris Olave. So it completely wiped out my second receiver, my third receiver idea that I wanted.
That being said, I think this next pick was arguably my favorite pick that you made.
So I'm sitting there thinking, and we talk about value, and I mentioned how JJ, like if I'm not going to get JJ, I want to back him up with somebody, right? Like a trust. And Dak Prescott and Michael Penix were on the board. And I thought about it, and I was like, man, Dak's more of the player now, but I really do believe in JJ, so I think JJ is going to be my now.
Yeah. So
if that's the case, I'm put in a spot where I'm trying to offload Dak pretty aggressively, and I probably won't get the value I really want in return. So I went Michael Penix Jr. here because, again, super young quarterback, going into year 2, a lot of room to grow. And miss on those receivers. If JJ pans out and Michael Penix is solid, I know now this is an asset. I can get that second receiver, right? That third receiver on my roster of somebody very good. I can get that second running back plus if I need be. But a quarterback, again, being so insulated, I took youth over Dak as my quarterback 3. And do I think he's going to outproduce Dak this year or even possibly next year? Probably not. But there's a chance that he can. So screen value there. I really thought about going. I really wanted Jerry Jeudy is who I wanted because I need that receiver. After I missed out on Olave, I missed out on like DJ Moore. Jerry Jeudy was also in kind of that mix of what I was kind of thinking as well. But with Michael Penix being there, I couldn't pass up the value over need.
I think for me, when you look at JJ McCarthy going 410, obviously it's a little bit higher than I would have taken him. I totally get it. You're banking on your guy. You believe in the system. You believe in the player. For me, I don't see those two guys drastically different. I see them as pretty close to the same tier. I'd probably put them in the same tier. So to get a guy almost 3 rounds later that I would put in the same tier, I think that's really good value. And now you have a chance to get 2 young assets that could be very, very valuable in coming years.
Yeah, and I don't view them the same tier at all. Can Michael Penix enter that tier? Yeah, but again, I believe in the upside so much. So
I think for me, I saw Michael Penix as the better player in college. Like I had his tape higher, and I think they're both really good offenses. I think I like Michael Penix as a player a little bit more, but obviously I like McConnell or Connell. O'Connell, thank you. Better as a offensive mind.
And let me be clear about my JJ McCarthy love. Like I like JJ's tape, right? Like he's a solid young quarterback. I'm more with JJ, more like excited about him is about the system he's in and the weapons around him.
And the weapons.
Yeah. Yep. So like I think he will thrive in that system. It's not necessarily the player. We talk about systems can elevate a skill set. And I think this system here, just like the same thing. Why is Brock Purdy so good? Brock Purdy's a talented quarterback, but the system does him great benefits as well. Sure. So that stuff does matter. And I think JJ is going to take a massive leap because of that. So with Michael Penix, way more question marks, way less weapons. We don't even know if Kyle Pitts is going to be on this team by the time this season ends. So I went Michael Penix. I passed up on Jerry Jeudy. Again, I knew I needed a receiver. I thought Jerry Jeudy would have been better for my team now, but the best value for me would have been Michael Penix because if Michael Penix hits, I can get Jeudy plus going forward. So I take Michael Penix. Then it goes Chuba Hubbard. Then Dak Prescott goes off the board, and then Matt is on the clock.
Yeah. So when I picked last round and I grabbed Jared Goff, I had full intentions of getting my tight end next. And the guys I was pigeonholing was T.J. Hawkins, who you picked, and Colston Loveland, who also went. So I'm not like scrambling at this point, but I am I'm shifting gears, right? Because I see the other guys that are left, and none of them are like I don't feel like any of them I need to jump out of my seat to pick right here. I feel like, what's the difference between Dalton Kincaid and David Njoku and Evan Ingram and Kyle, you know what I mean? Kyle Pitts is a different story. And like Mark Andrews, Tucker Kraft, all those guys kind of felt similar to me.
Even look at guys like Mason Taylor still on the board, like tons of rookie tight ends still on the board.
Right. So I just felt like there was no urgency there anymore. When I made my other pick, I was like, this is where
you're kind of punting now.
Yeah, I kind of feel like if I get Hawkinson, cool. I'll take Loveland as a young guy that has a ton of upside. After that, like whatever. So I ended up going. I felt like a pretty high upside player at this point. 27-year-old DK Metcalf obviously just switched teams, went to Pittsburgh. Aaron Rodgers is there now. If it works out, it's going to work out fantastic. If it does not work out, this is kind of a bit of a bust pick. You know what I mean?
Pittsburgh's all in. They're old now.
They are, but that could go one of two ways. You know what I mean? Like that situation in general. And, this is obviously a 1-year thing with Aaron Rodgers as their quarterback. He's already kind of mentioned the fact that this is probably his last season playing. So there is just a little bit of uncertainty kind of going into DK's long-term, if you're digging in for the long-term type of stuff. But I feel good about the other guys I have already. Rome Odunze and CeeDee Lamb as my other two guys. DK Metcalf, if he performs well, I think could automatically he could probably leapfrog Rome Odunze and be my number 2 guy.
Yeah.
And then that's very likely for 2025.
Sure. And then Rome Odunze will slide in, as DK Metcalf kind of fades out. So that's kind of how I saw that pick and why I made it there.
Nope, makes a lot of sense. So right after that, Joe Mixon, Jerry Jeudy went to Pete. I was really hoping Jerry Jeudy was going to make it to me. He did not. Isaiah Pacheco, Tyreek Hill. Then it put me back in a spot where, once again, I was like, man, I don't love where I keep landing as far as the players that are available. I feel like the guys that are available aren't drastically different than guys I'm going to get 2-3 rounds later at this point. So at this point, I kind of just wanted to go, where's the best value that I can find and who's somebody that I love? And that's kind of the route that I ended up going. So I took my third quarterback in Tua. I would feel comfortable-ish with him as my quarterback 2, but I feel great with him as my quarterback 3 because we know that when he's healthy and this offense is playing well, I mean, 2 years ago, he led the league in passing yards. Like, he has good talent and good ability when the offensive is right and when he's healthy. And those are two things that, unfortunately, have been very hit and miss the past couple of years.
Yes.
So we'll have to see. But I'm good with him as my third quarterback, a guy that could rebound and gain value once again. Jameson Williams went at 7-12. And then at 8-1, we had Alvin Kamara go. And at this point, I'm looking at him like, man, I have a really, really young build. It might not be year one that I'm really able to compete, but I do think long-term I have a core that I really like. So I'm just going to kind of lean into it, and I think this is a player that's right around that range of best player available, but it's also a guy I like. So I went with Cam Scatterboot here at 8-2. It's probably the riskiest pick that I made in the draft, and I'm prepared to say, like, hey, this could blow up. But for me, after like the 5th, 6th round, I really care a lot more about upside than I do about floor. Like, I can't miss with my first few rounds, specifically my first 3 rounds.
Yep.
But even like into round 4, I really don't want to miss. After that, though, I really care a lot more about upside. Cam Scatterboot has huge upside with this team. He could easily become the featured back in this offense, and it would not surprise me or a lot of people. So a little bit of a riskier pick here, but I went with Cam Scatterboot at 8-2.
I think that's a nice pick. And just knowing how I ended up going, I felt a little risky as well. I do feel like this is the time to take some shots. So I think that's a nice spot to take him. After you, it was Jayden Higgins at 8-3, and then George Pickens at 8-4, Devontae Adams at 8-5, Bryce Young went right before me at 8-6, and then I was on the board. And this is where I decided I need to get I'm looking at the available quarterbacks, and I'm not really loving anything for the long term.
Sure.
And guys on the board are, Sam Darnold, Justin Fields, Geno Smith, Tyler Shuck, Anthony Richardson, Matthew Stafford. Those are all guys that are available at this point. I ended up going Jackson Dart. And just sticking with the young first-round quarterback and just hoping that works and pans out there in New York. Obviously, I already have 2 quarterbacks in Jordan Love and Jared Goff, but, Goff's he's getting up there. He's a little bit of an older guy, so I wanted to back him up with something that had some youth at that position. So I just felt like Dart was the guy to kind of throw here.
Yeah, makes sense.
Throw that dart.
After me was Matthew Golden, then Dalton Kincaid, and then Rich was back on the clock.
Yeah, and for me, having a Emeka Egbuka, this made this a little bit more challenge for me. I took Chris Godwin, but again, best player available in my eyes. Somebody who I mentioned before was the wide receiver 1 overall going into the week before he got hurt. And even when Chase passed him that week beforehand, it was only by like point-something points. Like, it wasn't a lot before he actually got hurt. So to me, it's a gradual, transition here. Like, so when Godwin fades out, I do have a Emeka. I'm not worried about Emeka sliding and doing any damage crazy from a fantasy standpoint because it'd be Mike Evans and Chris Godwin this year. So even though I didn't have my solid wide receiver 2 in Judy or Olave or more, I get Chris Godwin, a little bit older, but somebody who consistently probably can get it done here. Consistently.
Would you have done like a Matthew Golden if he was there over Godwin, just so it's not same teams?
Nope. I still would have went If Godwin would have been gone, I probably would have taken like Ricky Pearsall and gambled on the upside there, or even maybe a Brandon Ayuk.
By the way, I was looking at Ricky Pearsall when I picked Jackson Dart, and I was looking at Matthew Golden, but I ended up going with the quarterback because I just felt like I already had three wide receivers. So.
Yeah, I would take Pearsall over Golden, just to me a clear path. Even though like they're both a lot of different options, It's just Golden's got so many guys around him that can stick out.
That's a nightmare situation for the wide receivers trying to pick those Golden State. Green Bay. Why do I have like a Green Bay block in my brain?
It's late.
Yeah,
it's a late night show.
The Green Bay wide receiver. It's gonna be tough to pick week in and week out. I mean, Jordan Love's that's great for him, but everyone else that's tough to kind of figure out.
Yeah, so I get Godwin, and then goes Montgomery, Mike Evans, Brandon Ayuk, Ricky Pearsall back to back, and then I'm on the clock, and I still realize like my receiving room can use that. I still need that third guy, right? Like I still need a third receiver, but I still only have Devon Achane at running back, and I don't like a lot of these running backs. So I went DeAndre Swift. DeAndre Swift feels like he's been in the league forever, but he's only 26 years old. I love the offense he's in. Ben Johnson goes there. We saw what he did to Jahmyr Gibbs, and he doesn't have a lot of competition around him. You got Roshan Johnson, you got Kyle Monangai, like not a lot of guys out there to really threaten DeAndre Swift from being the start, like taking away touches at the running back position. So having that avail to me, and everybody else behind him that are going to have those touches, Aaron Jones, James Conner, all 30 or older. I want to take a chance on, because if Swift does manage to hit in this offense, there's a good chance he could possibly be there again next year. So maybe get a 2-year window. Love the offensive system. It was him or Josh Downs. And maybe how everything played out, I could have gone Josh Downs, but I was happy to running back here. And again, having Michael Penix in my back pocket, knew I had something I could work with. And I kind of, again, once I missed out on those receivers and I missed out on those running backs, I was still going to grab that value, knowing that I was going to grab that to eventually, if this was a real draft, I'm making moves come September, October, November to really put myself in position. And again, depending on where my team is as well. Maybe I just play it out and get draft picks with those, or I do get the running back I need. So I go DeAndre Swift, then it goes Tucker Kraft, Mark Andrews, and then Matt, you're back on the clock.
Yeah, so this was another one of those picks where I got screwed. Like I really was pigeonholing Mark Andrews and Tucker Kraft. I kind of mentioned that on the last one, and they went computer pick right before I did. So I just decided to kind of pivot. I already kind of went for an older guy in DK Metcalf. I'm going to go with another kind of, not older, but like in their prime type of wide receiver. And I go Michael Pittman here. Obviously coming off a down year where he was playing with a broken back for a chunk of the season, which is not easy. I do anticipate Indy having a better passing attack. I just, Anthony Richardson completing 47% of his passes last year is not going to cut it. So, obviously the early reports are Daniel Jones is kind of leading that thing. It's going to take a pretty big jump from Anthony Richardson for him to leapfrog Daniel Jones at this point, which could happen, but that would mean that Anthony Richardson is looking better also. So either way, it's good news, I think, for Michael Pittman, that they just got some solid competition in there, and the situation's going to be better than it was last year, no matter what. So I like Pittman as a player, and I think, at this point in the draft, to get a guy that, honestly, Michael Pittman could be above Rome Odunze, who I picked in the 5th round on any given week, just depending on matchups or depending on how they end up playing or how the targets get distributed there in Chicago. So who knows?
Yeah, absolutely. I have no issue with this pick. I'm okay. And even though the offense is a little questionable and investing in it, and you'll see that with my next pick. So we had Luther Burden go at 9-7, 9-8, James Conner, 9-9, Brian Robinson, 9-10, Tyrone Tracy. So a little mini running back run there. And there were 2 running backs ADP wise, two wide receivers ADP wise that I was really looking at, hoping that they would come back to me. One was Chris Godwin. I should have known that Rich would take him if he was there, but I was hoping with the Emeka Ibuka that he might not. He went. The other guy was still there, and that was Josh Downs. Josh Downs last season, when it was a non-Anthony Richardson quarterback, he averaged almost 15 points a game. That's wide receiver 1, like low-end wide receiver 1 level. So we saw some really good things out of him last year. If we get that type of play from a Daniel Jones this year, which just means like competent. It's not like Joe Flacco was amazing. We just need competent play. So whether that means Anthony Richardson, like you said before, is playing well enough to give us competent quarterback play, or we get that from a Daniel Jones, I could see Josh Downs kind of having a breakout season this year. He started to a little bit last year, but with how chaotic that offense was, we never really got to see it. 9-12, we had Cortland Sutton. Now we're into the 10th round, Tony Pollard. And then I finally took a tight end, which I did, taking a tight end in the 10th round. I would have not thought of the 3 of us that I wasn't the last one taking a tight end.
Right.
It's very, especially for being you, Matt. I mean, it's rare to see you go out of the first 3 rounds without a tight end. So that was kind of surprising in that sense. But it was down to really 2 guys for me, David Njoku, Evan Ingram. I kind of waffled back and forth between both those players. I knew both of those were a little bit shorter term assets. It's not like I was getting a young tight end, but both guys that I thought short term could put up some good numbers. I ended up going with
short term, but you're talking like 2 to 3 years.
Yeah. It's not like a 1 year thing, but yeah, the next 2-3 seasons.
I thought both those guys this late in tight end premium, tremendous value.
Yeah, I was thrilled to get him here. So I feel like that really made me feel good about my whole team, not going tight end earlier and just kind of waiting, because he's a player that, would it shock anybody if he was tight end 4 this season? I don't think so. I think his redraft ADP is right around tight end 6 or something like that.
Higher if he truly plays his Joker role in Payne's offense, he could finish even higher.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was pretty happy to get him there. Then we had Travis Etienne off the board at 10-3, Trey Harris, Aaron Jones, Justin Fields, and then Matt, you're up.
I'm finally up. I'm finally up to bat at the tight end position as well. This is where I felt like I finally every other guy had like dropped off the list. Evan Ingram was the last one. I was like, okay, I need to grab my guy, and it was David Njoku. He was kind of my safety net. So all the rest of my safety nets at the tight end position kind of had evaporated. And similarly, waiting this long and getting David Njoku, I feel great about the whole rest of my team. Like it magically makes everything feel better when you finally get it, and to get it in the 10th round. And David Njoku, when Deshaun Watson's not the starting quarterback, is a very viable tight end.
13.5 points per game.
Yeah, he's a very viable tenant, and it's expected that there is not going to be a Deshaun Watson return anytime soon, and possibly ever. I mean, look at the way they drafted, and he's hanging around, he's doing things, he's throwing to wide receivers, but the truth is he's in a crowded room, and there's probably just better players on the roster at this point, and they're shifting their whole entire offense back away from the stuff that they did last year, kind of to tailor to him. So I think the stars are aligning, everything's pointing in the direction of the Browns kind of moving on from Deshaun Watson if and when he ever gets back. So I would expect Dave Njoku, at least for the next few years, to be a very solid contributor. Obviously, they went out and drafted Harold Fannin in the 3rd round as kind of a, who knows, maybe a David Njoku eventual replacement, but that's a 2 or 3 year process at least. So I feel pretty good about Njoku at this point. after my pick there, it was Jayden Reed and then Khalil Shakir, and then Rich was on the clock.
Yeah, before I tell you our pick, I got to tell you about our friends over at myffpc.com. You know, if you're listening to the podcast, you know, here in July, you are a Dynasty enthusiast just like I am. You're putting into work because there is no off season. And that's how you get ahead, right? The people that play Dynasty and stay stagnant, they get passed up by putting into work, watching ADP, hearing shows like this, put you in the best position to make trades. And, you know, the more time you put in, the more leagues you want to play. It is. That's why we have the Dynasty GM to help you out. And I understand sometimes it might be hard to find 11 other players to play in a league with that you can trust, or that will be just as committed as you are, or, you know, as active as you want to be
on the chats, all that kind of, you know what I mean? Like on the trades, you know, if you're sending on a trade, you're getting replies, all that kind of stuff.
And more importantly, like, you might be willing to, hey man, I put in so much work. I'm ready to take my Dynasty game to another level. I'm ready to play in a $500 league. I'm ready to play in a $1,000 league. I'm ready to play in a $1,500 league. I'm ready to play in a $2,200 league.
I'm ready to ditch rec and go to travel baseball.
There you go. And that's what my FFPC gives you, that opportunity to expand your Dynasty catalog, your portfolio, right? To get in there and play in more leagues and really take this game that you love, you put all this work into, and utilize it to benefit you financially, right? Like, what's the point of studying to become a doctor and then go work at Blockbuster? Blockbuster doesn't even exist anymore. So what are you doing?
That's a terrible.
What are you doing?
It's a bad investment, is what I'm saying. So invest in yourself. Get to myffpc.com. Make sure you use that promo code NERDS, and you're gonna get into a $25 off any league you want. And maybe you found our show and you're just trying to get into Dynasty, and you want the security of like, hey, I want to trade my future picks, but I want to make sure this league is around. My FFPC has been around, and they've never had a league fold ever. So you have security at the highest level. And if you want to get a Dynasty and feel that security and just kind of get your feet wet, $25, you can join a $75 league and be totally comfortable getting your feet wet. And maybe you've been playing for a long time, but you never tried Superflex or the RotoViz TriFlex. You just kind of want to try something out. So you're like, hey, I'm just going to join a $75 league. I'm going to use this NERDS coupon code for $25 off. It's only going to cost me $50. If I don't like it, I'll just leave the league and go to another league. You know, try something else out. So check them out, myffpc.com, promo code NERDS.
Blockbuster video.
Yeah, that was a pool right there.
Those were fun Friday nights walking around checking out videos.
Dude, the best.
It was pretty great. All right, and
Thanks, AI.
Thanks, AI, for ruining everything.
All right. We got to tell you about a brand new tournament over on FastDraft. It's the Rabbit. This isn't your typical best ball format, and it's creating massive opportunities for sharp players like our listeners. Here's what makes the Rabbit special. 15 roster spots starting 8 players. Full PPR with total point scoring and only 10 teams per draft, going 15 rounds deep. With a 20-second clock, drafts finish in just 20 minutes. Twice as fast as the traditional best ball draft. Plus, it's completely rake-free, giving volume players the best possible ROI. Rake-free, that's crazy to just be able to, we're just going to take all the money. Best part, since so many new players are discovering best ball through FastDraft, the ADP is still considered pretty soft. Perfect for experienced Dynasty players to exploit. Use promo code NERDS when you first sign up with FastDraft, and you will get a deposit match 100% up to $50. So that $50 quickly turns into $100 there. And you'll want to use all of that money. It's a great platform. But don't forget, when you sign up, you also get a free year of Dynasty Nerds. That's right, a free year. If you're not a member, this is your opportunity to get in on it. If you are a member, we'll still give you $25 gift certificate to our merch store. That means you can get yourself a free shirt, because that's what it's $25. Or you can get yourself money towards a hoodie or something bigger like that as well. So head over to FastDraft, use promo code NERDS today.
So I'm going to pick here at 10-10, and I took a huge gamble on a player who hasn't done anything since rookie year. I took Kyle Pitts, and tight end premium, for me, it's just worth the shot, right?
Roll the
you're
dice,
chasing
man.
upside.
Yep.
He's only 24 years old. We saw him be a high-end Dynasty asset already, and he's most likely a player that just needs a change of scenery. Wouldn't be surprised if he's traded at the deadline as well. His name has been mentioned in trade talks now for months upon months. But the big thing is, again, he's only 24 years old, and we saw he could do it. So Maybe it's a new system that could change things. More likely a new team.
Maybe Arthur Smith will trade for him. Who knows?
It's one of those things where he's not in my tight end one, so it's a nice gamble piece. He's still a name. That if anything picks up at all, he could be a very high tradable asset for me. So I take Kyle Pitts. Then goes Keon Coleman, Sam Darnold, Zach Charbonnet, Travis Kelce. I'm back on the clock, and I double down. I take Mason Taylor here too. Another tight end that I really liked his tape. Really young. I think he's only 21 years old as well. And the number 2 option almost immediately in this Jets offense. Another player that we could see take a significant jump in his ADP. We saw a guy like Sam Laporta do it just a few years ago. So Mason Taylor being tight end premium, like you kind of said, Garrett, like I'm chasing like upside. Matt, you said the same thing. I'm chasing upside. So where's the most upside? You know, a lot of these, it's going to be the tight end positions, the quarterbacks, guys that hold the league name, Superflex tight end premium, quarterbacks, tight ends. We're all chasing that tight end after getting up to tight end 3 or 4. So get in Pitts, get in Mason Taylor. And this is how I like to draft, right? Like I love to attack the draft, and then right when we get around 10, like rookie second-year tight ends, I like to gobble them up, and that's why I'm a tight end slut, right? Like I try to have a really big library of these guys in my back pocket, because I always found over my time of playing tight end premium is, even though like you might be able to trade Kyle Pitts or Mason Taylor like straight up for a stud, they are the perfect cherry on top of trades, right? Where it gives the perspective, and sometimes not even perspective, the truth of it looks like you're overpaying for a trade by throwing in this young tight end for somebody in a tight end premium league. Whereas the way I build my teams, and I have such a large amount of them, I'm okay giving one of those guys away because I have more in my back pocket. So they are really good deal makers when you're trying to get extra trades, or like you want to squeak that first out, but somebody's kind of just has it like, it's not really worth the first in my eyes. You throw in a guy like Mason Taylor, who's a second round pick, right? In a lot of these rookie drafts. But to me, that now puts me in position to get a young player that I want at a more premium position
I like
than that. So
I like
Mason Taylor for me here. Then goes Jacoby Myers, Jonnu Smith, and Matt's on the clock. And I would let everybody who's listening take a deep breath and guess who Matt took. It is a wide receiver. And if you think real long and hard and you're an avid listener and you might possibly love Matt O'Hara more than anybody else, you probably know who he's going to say.
Absolute smoke show.
Come on, Besh.
So I ended up going Jack Bash. You totally ruined the surprise. But
I
yes,
to call you Bish.
Mason Taylor was the guy that I actually wanted, and for two reasons. I wanted to get young at the position. I wanted to get a rookie. I was specifically looking for rookies in this round. I don't know why, it just felt right. And when Mason Taylor went, I looked down the tight end kind of ADP, and I saw somebody that I really liked, but he was probably like 3 or 4 rounds later. And I was like, I can definitely wait here. I think I'm going to be able to get this player later. If not, there's some other names that
I'm surprised you didn't go Terrence Ferguson. That
I kind of like. Yeah and no. I felt like I could get Ferguson possibly later.
Wrong.
And Terrence Ferguson went super late in the 14th round. I could have.
He went the next round.
No,
that's Jake Ferguson.
That's Jake Ferguson.
Wrong, Ferguson.
Listen,
Turd Ferguson.
What? Turd Ferguson. It's a funny name. So I ended up going Jack Bash, and it is twofold. I mean, obviously I love the player, but I was specifically looking for another rookie on my roster, and I like accumulating as many young wide receivers as possible, especially a guy drafted in the second round like Jack Bash.
Yeah. All right. Right after this, I'm gonna finish up the 11th round, and then we'll probably just recap our teams.
Guys, yeah.
Yep. And kind of talk about what we liked, missed opportunities, whatever, that kind of thing. So it then went Calvin Ridley, Geno Smith, Trey Benson, Isaiah Likely, and then I went with Juwan Jennings. I've been kind of on this train all offseason talking about there's going to be targets available in this offense.
Yep.
We've seen Juwan Jennings be the top target when guys are missing, and he's shown that he can do massive things with it, even despite missing a few games and having other guys involved. He was a wide receiver 2 last year.
I mean, Ayuk's obviously he's not going to start the season.
Nope.
And
Debo's gone.
Debo's gone, and what's his name, pull a hammy already? Pearsall?
Oh, did he?
I think he had a hammy issue in whatever.
Okay, I didn't even hear that, but if that's the case. And I know he's been dinged up in the past too, Pierce Hall has. So Juwan Jennings just really has an incredible opportunity to be really solid. And if there was one position that I felt was questionable on my team, felt great as JSN as my wide receiver 1, Jalen Waddle as my wide receiver 2 is okay. Josh Downs is my wide receiver 3. So it's kind of helped a little bit in case he needs to fill in for one of those guys. So Deebo Samuel was then the last pick of the 11th round. So here we'll kind of just wrap up our teams and kind of how we felt about things. So total, my team was Jayden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Travion Henderson, Caleb Johnson, Jalen Waddle, Tua Tagovailoa, Cam Skattebo, Josh Downs, Evan Ingram, Juwan Jennings, Kyle Williams from the New England Patriots, and then another rookie, Elijah Aurora, in the 13th round, J.K. Dobbins in the 14th, and then Shedeur Sanders with the second to last pick of the draft. So overall, I wouldn't say it's like my favorite team I've ever drafted. It's a little bit different from where I typically go because I do traditionally position myself towards the back to get myself at least one of those top 3 running backs. If not, sometimes I even take 2, depending on how things fall. But overall, it is a very young team with a ton of potential. I liked getting J.K. Dobbins late to kind of help me early on if Caleb or Travion or Skattebo don't really get things moving quickly. He felt like a nice guy to kind of just help fill in there. Kyle Williams has a lot of upside. The thing that makes me nervous is even though Evan Ingram made my tight end position solid and my quarterbacks are great, I'm just so young at wide receiver and running back that we'll see. So I liked it, didn't love it. I don't know if you guys have any thoughts.
No, I agree. I think the wide receiver room would be your biggest question mark, and it's not even the top end of it. It's the depth type of stuff when I'm looking at that. But I like everything else on your team. I think you did a fantastic job at the quarterback position. To have Tua as your third guy, I think is great, especially when you have a couple of young guys that could falter, specifically a Caleb Williams from week to week. I think it's great to have a guy like Tua to supplement there. And obviously, you and I had the same tight end strategy, and I think it worked out great for both of us. So,
yeah, absolutely.
That is not my norm either. I know that is kind of your
I'm a
leaning
little,
is to do that. And I went with it this time, and because I fought it, it just kind of never fell to me. Like I was fighting it. It's not like I purposely waited till the 10th round and the last out of the 3 of us to pick a tight end, but it just happened that way, and it ended up working out okay for me.
Yeah, I like your team. I think if Josh Downs hits, which I'm in on Josh Downs as well.
Yeah. Josh Downs and Caleb Johnson are the ones I feel like most need to hit for me, for my team to hit.
But, I mean, everybody's going to mostly have a team like that. You need 1 or 2 players to pan out the way you want to. But, you're drafting them because you think that's the player that is going to hit, right? There's a whole purpose. Of course, nobody when you draft a startup team, definitely, we just did 15 rounds. It gets way deeper. You're doing 25 rounds. Like, you need players like that. Like, you're not – if you're going to take value, right, that's the way you're going to do it. Let's just build. If you draft a starting lineup, you're going to start your starting lineup. But long term, it's probably going to come back to bite you in the butt. That's why you draft value. So you have 2 in your back pocket. Your running back room's a little thin. Your receiver, but that's every roster for the most part. So I think overall, the fact that once you drafted Jayden Daniels and Caleb Williams, I felt your team was going to be real hard to go sideways.
Right.
Then you added Travion, you added Jackson Smith-Njigba. I love the Jalen Waddle value. I love the Tua value. I like the Josh Downs and Evan Ingram value. And then to wrap up and secure it with Juwan Jennings, you get Kyle Williams, who's a nice upside player, a young tight end to back up Ingram. J.K. Dobbins has some upsides in Denver. I like your team. I think it's for the number 2 spot. I think for what was there, I thought you did a pretty good job navigating the draft. Maybe I would have went Jayden Higgins over Cam Skattebo, or maybe George Pickens there over Cam Skattebo. And then when he got back, you could have gone Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears, or somebody who you like. But I get it. At the same time, I love Skattebo too.
Yeah.
But overall, I mean, for what you had available, I thought it was a really nice team.
Awesome.
I said having the fact of having Jayden Daniels and Caleb Williams, it's so easy.
That's a huge advantage.
Yeah, it's so easy. It's why it's so important. Like the core of your team, that cornerstone team, you really want to secure that definitely with youth, because at any point if your team goes sideways, you want that cornerstone to be strong. It's why I'm so adamant. Like, I really won't take players that are really over 26 years old in my first three rounds. It's just the way I draft because, and listen, there's too many good players that are under that age that you could take, right? And you got some really good ones. So I thought you did a really good job.
All right. So next up, starting from the top for my team is Bijan Robinson, CeeDee Lamb, Jordan Love, Jonathan Taylor, Rome Odunze, Jared Goff, DK Metcalf, Jackson Dart, Michael Pittman, and David Njoku. Obviously, Jack Besh was the last one I talked about. And then in the 12th round, I ended up going Jaylen Warren. I think a guy that has at least upside starter potential, and I only have 2 running backs at this point. Then Brendan Strange was the guy that I kind of teased earlier about the guy that I knew I could get him probably 3-4 rounds later, and I did end up getting him. I feel really good about that. I think the opportunity there in Jacksonville is really going to be a good one this year, and he's going to kind of blossom into at least a usable asset. And Rashid Shaheed is there for my pick in the 14th round, which I mean, to get a starting wide receiver, caliber at this point just feels great. And then my last pick here is another tight end. I went back to the well and went Ben Sinnott, another guy who,
upside,
obviously an upside guy, young guy, to kind of supplement for the future after David Njoku's gone.
So how'd you feel about it? Because it is a different strategy than what you typically go with.
Total different strategy, and it feels nice to not have to worry about running back. And most of the time when I do it the other way, it's kind of like, I freaking hate my running. You know what I mean? I hate my running backs. So while it's not super deep, with only the 3, Bijan Robinson, Taylor, and Jaylen Warren, I feel good about it still because the top end of it is so good. And obviously this is like a 15 rounder. There would be more rounds. Yeah, and that's where I would
picking up a lot of rookie running backs.
I would be doing a bunch of late
hunters, things on those lines, like really load up on those rookie running backs. And there's so many of this. That's a good thing to talk about too, Matt. You're right, because like it's a good year to do that because there's so many running backs out there. Even a guy like oh my gosh, now Isaac Rendo and Sam Fran and Christian McCaffrey. There's so many running backs more available that are really in that like 16, 17, 18 range.
Jordan James, like all those type of guys.
Those are all guys that you would have been drafting consistently. It would just been a run of running backs. And I would have been in the exact same boat because I thought about it too. Like there's so many running backs that would add to my roster after 100%. And it is, like I said, it's good to identify those holes where you are weak at and then just attack that with a lot of youth. Mm-hmm. Like when you have a 25, 30 round draft, like those are 10 players you're adding, right? Like you can sprinkle in a couple of receivers there if you want to, like guys like Darius Slayton, they might be able to just fill in if you need a guy, but mostly those running backs are really there for you. And you know what you have immediately, so they're not roster cloggers as well. Right. Compared to like Jared, Garrett, like you say, like why have your like 8th receiver that no. Like once you hit like round 16, attack with all running backs, tight ends that are young, and then maybe any kind of like path of a quarterback at all.
Yep, absolutely.
So my team from the 10th spot, I went Malik Nabers, Justin Herbert, Devon Achane, J.J. McCarthy, Emeka Egbuka, T.J. Hockenson, Michael Penix, Chris Godwin, DeAndre Swift, Kyle Pitts, Mason Taylor, and then Tyler Shuck, Xavier Legette, Matthew Stafford, and Harold Fannin. So to me, I came away with like very aware of what I had going on. Like you, Matt, said too, like I would have totally planned on just attacking running back from this point forward because I only have DeAndre Swift and Devon Achane. That is it on my roster. But I'm okay with that as well because I consider this draft like a clay draft, right? It's a reason why after I got J.J. McCarthy, I took Michael Penix. Then I took pretty much outside of Xavier Legette, which I thought was really good value. Since he played hurt last year, 1st round pick. Now he has TEP McMillan to offset some coverage on him. He's a player who can take a big step forward. But I grabbed Tyler Shuck, right? 2nd round pick in New Orleans, has a clear path to be the starter. I got Matthew Stafford, another quarterback. If anybody's quarterback goes down, I can get a 2nd round pick in season for Matthew Stafford. And honestly, I could start Matthew, talking about like Michael Penix, I could start Matthew Stafford right away over J.J. McCarthy. So having Michael Penix, having Tyler Shuck, having Matt Stafford, I have 5 quarterbacks.
That's awesome.
Right?
I love having tons of quarterbacks.
Me too. Because I know like if I want a running back now, like I could flip Matt Stafford. If my team's like, if this all kind of plays out, like I could flip Matt Stafford for any of these older running backs or anything of those. Maybe like Joe Mixon goes down, Nick Chubb starts, and Nick Chubb's just having that one last good year, and I really need a run back to contend. I get probably Nick Chubb plus for Matt Stafford.
And your team felt similar to kind of the strategy that I tend to go with too, where it felt like you just constantly took the best player available, regardless of position.
Yep.
So right now that's going to hurt you a little bit because your wide receivers are going to be tough because obviously Malik's awesome, but then your wide receiver 2 is going to be battling with your wide receiver 3 in Emeka and Chris Godwin. So Emeka's going to have to wait a little bit, and then there's not like another guy. But what you can do is you can always make trades later, especially if Kyle Pitts ends up hitting. If one of your quarterbacks, J.J. McCarthy or Michael Penix, is starting to ball out, you can
Tyler Shuck wins that job. Like
Right.
all of a sudden,
you pair him with somebody else, and all of a sudden, I got a legit wide receiver too. So even though like it makes it a little bit uglier on the onset, you have the best value available to easily go make deals for what fits a better starting line.
Yeah, going back to that Mason Taylor. Mason Taylor looks good. Tyler Shuck's a starter. All of a sudden, team's not panning out, right? And I'm like, all right, wow, hey, I can give you Tyler Shuck and Mason Taylor. Give me this receiver. Now I jump a couple rounds.
Right.
I'm looking at Jordan Addison. I'm looking at Olave.
100%.
I get the guy 100% want.
You're looking at Ricky Pearsall in Team 11, who only has 2 quarterbacks. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Someone like that.
And like we started the show. I started the show yesterday by saying, hey, it's July. A lot of starters that are happening in June, July. Kind of going back what Garrett says all the time when we do the shows. When I draft now, like it's July. I have 2 more months to figure out my third receiver, my third running back. I have months to figure this out.
Team 12, their quarterbacks are Sam Darnold and Anthony Richardson.
Yeah.
They're going to come and calling for Matthew Stafford or Michael Penix or somebody.
And what's fun about that kind of stuff, when you go that strategy, you take best player available. This is the time as well, going up until August. Like this will hopefully not, but like it's guaranteed for at least because leagues can die out. Conversation.
Sure.
Your league will be super active all the way up until the season starts. Into the season, everybody's looking at their team.
Everybody's trying to
How's it's going to
jockey.
play out.
Yep.
Other people did the same thing that you did, trying to trade, post trades. Like your league's super active. So by taking advantage of doing the clay draft, which means you can mold it into something later, it does give you the opportunity to really make a lot of trades because everybody's in. Everybody's paying attention. Everybody's got those holes to fill. Nobody's built a super team yet, right? Outside of people trading like for future first and doing certain builds. So overall, I was pretty happy with this team for what I had. Knowing I still have a lot of work to do, but I have a lot of work to do on every team I'm on.
Absolutely.
It's always on the move, right? Every dynasty team is a team that I'm constantly considering a clay team that I have to mold until I feel like, hey, this team can win the ship. Like I feel like I'm the best team. The GM says I'm the best team. I'm ready to rock.
The funny part is, though, we got to give him his flowers because we poke fun at him all the time because Pete normally has some poor decision making and things like that. But he drafted with us. I would argue he might have ended up with the best draft out of all of us. Like
He did a really good job.
his team, he's got at quarterback, he's going to have Brock Purdy, Trevor Lawrence, and then Geno Smith as his third guy. His running backs, Omari and Hampton, and then he waited for older value later, but a bunch of guys that could start. James Conner, Aaron Jones, Javonte Williams, Jalen Wright, and then Woody Marks at running back. His receivers are Amon-Ra, Zay Flowers, Jerry Jeudy, Devontae Adams, and then Pat Bryant. And then he's got freaking Brock Bowers at tight end.
Slam
like,
dunk.
That's a really good build.
Really good
so,
team.
like, well done, Pete.
Yeah, he did an excellent job. And really capitalized again on that ADP value, waiting on quarterbacks to 4th and 5th. And I think that still holds true. I know I grabbed Herbert in the 3rd, but he's my guy, so I couldn't pass that value up.
In a second.
You know,
You got him in a second. Yeah.
I'm sorry, in a second. I think in hindsight, with the way my team built out, again, if I would have followed that strategy, I would have had Malik Nabers and Brian Thomas, Malik Nabers and Drake London, Malik Nabers and CeeDee Lamb, and now my team looks really good outside Justin Herbert. But then again, I'm gambling on. I have Jayden McCarthy, Michael Penix, Matthew Stafford, and Tyler Shuck, right? So it's a lot more risk to take that move.
Sure.
For what I did. So I think overall, yeah, Pete, I think everybody's team's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Did a pretty good job. And we'll be back next week. I don't know, what's next week's show?
Let me look. I don't remember off the top of my head.
Wasn't Deep Stashes? Is that it?
It might be our deep stashes
Deep
episode.
mustaches.
Yeah, deep stashes and games.
All right. So we're back next week with some games. I love July games and deep stashes. So see you next week, Nerd Herd.
Adios.